They found the children standing in silence, not crying, not screaming, just watching. When soldiers forced open the doors beneath a remote southern plantation, they expected to find weapons, supplies, or maybe fugitives hiding from the war outside. Instead, they found children, dozens of them, all sharing the same unsettling features, the same eyes, the same bone structure, the same pale resemblance to the woman who owned them. When asked who their parents were, the oldest child answered with words that made hardened men recoil. She says we belong to her, by blood. This is the story of the plantation mistress who didn't just enslave people, she engineered them. She was a widow, educated, composed, and respected in her community. Neighbors described her as quiet but efficient. Her plantation ran smoothly. Her fields were productive. Her household was orderly. No one questioned how she managed to recover from financial ruin so quickly. No one asked why her enslaved population grew while others declined. No one noticed that she rarely sold slaves and never bought new ones. She didn't need to. She had a system. The plan. The land was exhausted. Money was scarce. Buying enslaved laborers was expensive and risky. But people, she believed, could be produced. Not randomly, not emotionally, but scientifically, like crops, like livestock. She began keeping records, not diaries, not confessions, logs, charts, measurements, notes written in coded language. Pregnancies were called plantings, children were seedlings, fathers were stock. Her goal was simple and horrifying: create generations of enslaved people who were biologically tied to her people, who could never leave, never be sold, never exist outside her control. Because they weren't just property, they were family. Her first children. She was still young enough to bear children herself. She selected men from the enslaved population based on strength, health, and obedience. They had no choice. Refusal meant punishment or disappearance. The children she bore were officially registered as enslaved, listed as having unknown parents. On paper, they belonged to her. In reality, they were her biological sons and daughters. They lived in the main house, ate better food, wore clean clothes, learned to read and write, a dangerous privilege forbidden to others. She told them they were orphans she had rescued. They believed her. A divided household. As the years passed, the plantation became a closed world with its own hierarchy. There were the field workers laboring, exhausted, watched closely. There were the house servants, silent witnesses. And then there were her children, raised apart, isolated, groomed. The enslaved people in the quarters understood more than anyone realized. They saw which men were summoned to the house at night. They saw which women were forced into pairings. They whispered warnings their children were too young to understand. But no one could speak openly. Fear kept mouths shut. The next phase. When her oldest children reached adolescence, the plan advanced. She began pairing them, her own biological children, with enslaved teenagers from the quarters. Ceremonies were staged. Authority was enforced. Resistance was crushed before it could form. To the outside world, it looked like order. Inside, it was psychological torture. Some of her children accepted it. They had been raised to believe obedience was protection, that life on the plantation was safer than freedom. Others began to question. And that is when the system started to crack. The discovery. One daughter, observant, intelligent, found the records. She decoded the language, line by line, page by page. She learned the truth. Her mother was not her savior. Her mother was her owner. Her father was a man she had passed every day without knowing. Her future had already been decided before she was born. She confronted her mother in private. The response was calm. "Yes," the woman said. "This is what I built." She explained it as necessity, as vision, as progress. She warned her daughter that refusal meant sale, separation, or worse. "You live well because I planned it that way," she said. Disobedience destroys everything. Control through fear. Soon after, a young woman from the quarters tried to run. She was caught. The punishment was public. Everyone was forced to watch, including the mistress's own children. The message was unmistakable. This is what happens when you choose freedom. But fear has limits, and brutality can unite people faster than kindness ever could. Whispers of resistance. The enslaved population began sharing information, quietly, carefully. The mistress's children began listening. For the first time, they heard stories of women who disappeared, men who were sold after serving their purpose, children taken away when they showed too much independence. They realized something else. The mistress was afraid. Afraid of outside forces. Afraid of losing control. A